Hello and welcome to the Friday, March 3rd, 2022 edition of On Iowa Politics. We're coming in like a lion this week as we plan to discuss President Joe Biden's first State of the Union address, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds presenting the Republican response, and U.S. Senator Joni Ernst offering her take on the Biden administration's handling of Russia's military aggression in Ukraine. Before we get to that, though, we want to remind you that support for this podcast is provided by New Pioneer Co-op, celebrating 50 years as Eastern Iowa's source for locally and responsibly sourced groceries, with stores in Iowa City, Coralville, and Cedar Rapids, and online through Co-op Cart at newpi.coop. Hello, everyone. I'm Aaron Murphy, Des Moines Bureau Chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. With me today are Amie Rivers of the Waterloo-Cedar Falls Courier. Good morning, Amie.
Good morning, Aaron.
We have Jared McNett of the Sioux City Journal. Good morning, Jared.
Good morning. My veins are coursing with Cherry Coke Zero right now, so I'm plenty good to go today.
Nice. It's an excellent choice. And lastly, I don't know what's coursing through his veins. It's even at this hour, but it's Gazette opinion editor Todd Dorman. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning, and it's just my veins are filled with pure ice water.
Pure ice is what you said?
Well done.
Maybe ice and maybe a little bourbon. I don't know.
So, and before we get started here, I got to tell folks, and I'm starting to take this stuff personally, honestly, because the last time I filled in for James Lynch as host, I had to announce that it was Tom Barton's final episode because he had been promoted to an editor position of the Quad City Times. Now I'm hosting again, and today I have the displeasure of announcing that in a few weeks we'll be losing our own great Amie Rivers.
Aw, great.
She's accepted it. That's right. Amy's accepted a reporting position with Iowa starting line. Amie, just what is it? Me? It must be me, right?
It is you.
Is it the Badger stuff? Because I can swear if it's the Badger stuff, I can stop.
It is the Badger stuff. You're in Iowa now.
Yeah, I lied. I can't stop. So.
You must like the Hawkeyes, the Cyclones if you have to, but Badgers. You might as well be a Husker fan at that point. I don't even.
Well, there you have it. At least we know why we're driving so many people away now. But in all seriousness, Amie, congratulations. Everyone here at the podcast congratulates you, and we wish you nothing but the best. We're sure you'll continue to do great work at Starting Line, and we're glad to at least have you for a couple more weeks, right?
Yeah, I'll be here through the 18th, so I'll be on a couple more podcasts, and I'm sticking around in politics. I'm staying in Waterloo. I'm going to be covering Eastern Iowa. Hopefully we'll see you guys and be able to converse some more for sure.
There you go. Sounds good. Okay, moving on to the business at hand. First up this week, the State of the Union is strong, and that is because of the American people. And that, folks, is, I believe, the one and only thing that Joe Biden and Kim Reynolds agreed on Tuesday night. So let's talk about this, and let's make it simple and just go right around the horn here, have everyone give their thoughts. First on President Biden's what was his first State of the Union address. He addressed a joint session of Congress last year, but it wasn't technically a State of the Union. So, Amie, since you're bailing on us, you have to go last. So, Todd, you get us started.
Oh, I go first. Well, it was a solid speech. I don't think it will be particularly memorable as State of the Unions go. Not many of them are, but I thought he checked most or all of the boxes he needed to check. He needed to project defiance and be resolute on the Ukraine situation, and that was probably the part of the speech that drew the most bipartisan applause. There seemed to be some unity between Republicans and Democrats on wanting to meet the Russian aggression with resolve and aid and lethal weapons and things like that he outlined how they would support Ukraine. And he made it clear that there's not going to be United States ground troops or U.S. forces involving themselves in the war, but they're going to be shoring up the NATO alliance, in case Russia, gets even more aggressive. So, he talked about inflation, sort of threw in some economic nationalism with sort of the Buy America stuff he talked about. He painted a fairly optimistic picture of his accomplishments and what he expects the United States to be like after COVID. And, and I think he tried to answer the criticisms of his administration. And he had this unity agenda where I think it was like mental health and the opioid crisis and a couple other things that, sort of things that he thought that the country could unify around an effort to halt. So, yeah, and he's a Democratic president, and so he had to be heckled so he could check that box. The two congresswomen sort of yelled at him at an inopportune moment when he was about to talk about his son who died of cancer. So all in all, like I say, I think it was a pretty solid speech. The polling I've seen sort of reflects that people liked it. The speech may be more popular than the person who gave it. And, I think, people talk about a reset and all of these things. I don't know that he accomplished that. That's pretty difficult. But I think, he's had a lot of negative weeks and months. And I think he took the opportunity to have a positive night. And I think he accomplished that.
All right. Very good. Jared, what did you think?
So in terms of lasting stuff, I would kind of say it's probably not the best sign that a lot of the major chatter after the speech, at least what I saw, revolved around some people wondering what Biden meant with "go get 'em" near the end. I know there was a bunch of headlines about that.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of national headlines, and not just from conservative outlets, pointing out that he said Iranians instead of Ukrainians. And then there almost seemed to be as many photos of Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, yelling at Biden as there were of other stuff going on during the address. And so I am kind of inclined to think when that's some of the stuff that's boiling up and is what national outlets are honing in on, that maybe means that a lot of the actual substance either got lost or it's just stuff people have heard before. And so they're not as inclined to latch on to it.
Yeah, and you tweeted kind of about that at some point this week, Jared. I remember seeing it's just not terribly memorable. And I was talking to a political science professor here in Iowa afterwards, and he kind of talked about that. He said something similar to what you did, Jared, which is by Friday, no one will remember what was said. And to Todd's point, that's typical of a lot of State of the Union addresses too. It's not necessarily that a benchmark that Biden fell short of. It's just short attention spans, quick turnarounds and news cycles, and obviously we have a lot going on in the news.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially with everything else that's going on, it's hard for an hour-long speech about a bunch of different topics that happens every year to stick around long when you've got war going on.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Amie, did we leave anything unsaid?
I mean, they covered a lot of it, and I think Jared's right that it's really tough, especially in these days when you got to get a quick hit and get out. On Twitter, on TV, on whatever, for a State of the Union to have any sort of staying power. I mean, the amount of people that probably watched the entire speech and then watched the entire Kim Reynolds rebuttal, and then went and found the other congressional progressive rebuttal. Probably very low. It's probably the stable of political reporters, basically, and the other political junkies. But overall, I think, he is trying to put together somewhat of an agenda for this year. And I think what's really relevant, besides Ukraine, which is hugely relevant right now, especially in Iowa, is also that Equality Act. You heard congressional representatives talk about it after the speech. That, he called for passage of this Equality Act. If you don't know what it is, it would basically sort of be the equivalent to the Federal Voting Rights Act, right? Which would kind of take a federal approach to these states that are trying to pass more restrictive voting laws. That would take that away. So these states that are trying to pass more restrictive laws against transgender people, against transgender children, this Equality Act would basically sort of try to stymie that a little bit. So that's part of it, especially when you consider that Reynolds just passed just signed the bill regarding transgender girls not being able to participate in sports at either the K-12 or the college level. So that's still really relevant to people. And I think you might still have people latching on to parts of Biden's speech then throughout that to say this is, the figurehead of the Democratic Party and what he believes in. Here's how it contrasts with Reynolds. So stuff like that. And then Ukraine right now, and especially by the time we get this posted, there's going to be a million different developments there. And so it's like, what are we doing in this very moment is still going to be even more appropriate or more relevant.
Yep, that's so true. The only thing I'll add is what kind of struck me, and I'll up front, in the interest of full disclosure, I was also working on the Reynolds story, so I was kind of only half paying attention to President Biden. But it just, in broad terms, the topics that he chose to hit on, especially early on, and Todd touched on this a little bit. I mean, it seemed to be at least a concerted effort to appear bipartisan. I'm sure Republicans didn't see it that way, but I mean, you can't argue. I mean, you look at, obviously he started with Ukraine, and that was a no-brainer. But he brought up immigration policy and the borders, and while Republicans may disagree on how to approach that, the fact that a Democratic president even mentioned immigration policy in a State of the Union address, he talked about funding for law enforcement and pushed back on the fund the police narrative. He talked about the economy and even expressed empathy for Americans who are dealing with inflation. So there was at least that effort there. Was interesting. And then he did, eventually get into that, Democratic wish list of things that and some of the things that you were talking about there, Amie. So that was what stuck out to me. So after the president was done, and after the TV news talking heads got in their 2 cents, and apparently after a hype video that I still haven't seen, I know it was going around the social medias. I think the Republican Governors Association apparently put together. Expected to see Kim Reynolds running out to starting lineup music after that.
All of the lights by Kanye.
Is that what it was?
It was, yeah. That was the video I saw.
Fantastic. So anyways, after all that, we got Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds delivering the Republican Party's response to the State of the Union. She addressed the nation from Des Moines. It looked to me, and I don't know if anybody's confirmed this, and I haven't thought to ask, it looked like she was perched atop the State Historical Building here in the East Village, just about a block from where I'm sitting right now. And it had the Iowa Capitol beautifully lit in the background. So same thing, let's go around the horn again. And since I was so mean last time, Amie, you can start this time.
I'll take any time to talk about it. But yeah, I think, for Reynolds, she really, it was hers to lose. I think that she was set up pretty well for this speech. She's relatively in the middle of the pack, I think, when it comes to Republican governors. As far as getting her policies passed, she's done very well. And that's thanks to obviously having a Republican trifecta in the state. So she had a lot to celebrate. She's able to point to bills that were recently passed, like the flat tax. She's able to point to holding the line on COVID policy or lack thereof. She's able to point to, basically trying to, she doesn't have the surges of crime, in cities that other people have been talking about, that Biden was talking about in his speeches. So she's able to sort of point to that and be like, see, it's working here. And if you just, put it everywhere else, then it'll work there too. And obviously, Iowa is not the nation and has not been the nation probably for several years. We're no longer a swing state. We're pretty solidly Republican. Things that work here don't necessarily work in other states. Nevertheless, I think ultimately, I think Republicans are probably pretty happy with this speech overall. I think she didn't make any major gaffes. She was not talking, while sipping a bunch of water or anything like that. Did you guys notice any gaffes? I guess I didn't notice any gaffes.
No, she maybe just stumbled a tiny bit over one word, and I think she looked off camera once. I don't know what happened, but overall, it was pretty clean delivery. Todd, what did you think?
Well, needless to say, my expectations were fairly low, and she met them. It would be interesting to me if someday if they actually made the Republican response a real response. Like you hear the speech and then you actually respond to what the
Real
president
time.
said.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, that's, I guess it hasn't been that way for a long time, if it was ever that way. I was struck, I guess, by the contrast in tone. I mean, I think the president tried to be somewhat optimistic and project ahead to better days, and Kim Reynolds sort of, talked about how Democrats are destroying the country, and uh, the president prefers political correctness over military readiness, things like that, and that Americans feel like they're the enemy. So it was a pretty pessimistic speech for the most part. She sort of and like a lot of Republicans, blames Biden for uh, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Although it's difficult to tell what exactly could have been done. I don't think they favor sending U.S. troops in and things like that. So I think it's just it's a very typical argument that Republicans make against Democratic presidents, is that they're weak. I mean, and that the Republican Party is the more militarily muscular, although they tends to be Democratic presidents in office when we have big wars. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's uh,
Right.
but I think she captured the mood of her party and maybe captured the national mood. Lots of people think the country's on the wrong track and that things are going poorly. But I really think Republicans are going to need, some sort of optimistic, forward-looking message for the midterms. I mean, the winds are blowing in their direction, but I still think they've got some work to do on that. It's, you can't just say Democrats are horrible and tax cuts. I don't know if that's sort of the agenda, and we're going to ban transgender kids from sports and ban books. I mean, I think, like I say, that captures the mood of the party, but I don't know that nationally that's going to be a real popular agenda.
Yeah, that's a good point, Todd. And as I think about that now, because obviously, like you said, the out of power party is going to blame the party in power, but then you have to have the sales pitch, and there
Mhm.
was that, but it was much more. Governor Reynolds' remarks were much more of the former than the latter. She spent a lot of time talking about, to your point, what the Biden administration is doing wrong and why
Mhm.
things are so bad. I expected to hear all that stuff about Iowa much sooner than we did. It took much longer into the speech until she started about and you can do what we're doing in Iowa, which is lower taxes, give choice to parents and schools, blah blah blah. She got there eventually, but yeah, I thought it was a little later than I expected.
It seemed like it was kind of a Festivus speech. It was mostly an airing of grievances. I don't know if the feats of strength never happened, but you know,
Yet.
Is there a poll? Is there a poll up there on the historical building? You
yeah,
have to check that
probably
out.
some sort.
All right, Jared, wrap this one up for us.
So I guess first, kind of jumping off of something that got mentioned a second ago, I get for some people the whole political correctness versus military readiness thing is just a troll. Like for most people, that's just a troll move. But like for anyone that's serious about that, I really don't understand the logic there because I mean the U.S. hasn't done well in military incursions in the past, and we haven't been
Mhm.
having these same conversations. So I don't. Maybe there was a different political correctness I just didn't know about from the past that just bogged our troops down, and that's what caused them to lose. But I'm still stuck on the hype video and using all the lights by Kanye. It's a really good song. It's one of my favorites off of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but I don't know what it has to do with a response to the State of the Union. There's maybe some other like older Kanye songs they could have dipped into, reward the old timer Kanye fans who might have been watching the response. Um, as
What would
as
you
far
have
as
played, Jared?
you could play like Through the Wire. That's a good pump up song. Some stuff like that. It'd be good too. Navigated through COVID and stuff like that. You can play
There
Through
you
the
go.
Wire.
Oh,
Um,
missed opportunity.
yeah. As for the content itself, kind of like with the Biden one, I'm not sure how much people are going to remember from this one either in a week's time. Maybe they'll remember the Americans feel like they're the enemy's line. I'm not sure what else has a lot of staying power. And it's also, just difficult too for a governor to get a great foothold when they're going up against a president who spent a decent chunk of his speech talking foreign policy. You're always going to be on the losing end of that as a governor, especially a Midwestern governor. That's not really your realm at all in any way. So that's always going to be an uphill battle, no matter who it is that's giving the response, Republican or Democrat. And then, as someone who grew up in Missouri, I refuse to accept that the phrase Iowa nice is a thing. The only one I ever heard when I was a kid was Minnesota nice. I never heard about Iowa nice until I moved into Iowa. So this is just Iowa propaganda and not a real thing.
Wait a minute.
I know I'm already in trouble based on the Badger stuff that we talked about at the top, but I am with Jared 100% on this. And I'm not disputing whether or not Iowa people are nice. I want to make clear about that.
No.
Here. But the Iowa nice thing is not a thing outside of Iowa. He's absolutely right. The first time I heard of it was when I got here.
Minnesota nice is definitely a thing, and they are way too nice. I lived up there briefly for my first job after college. Entirely too nice and earnest people. I thought I was nice and earnest. No, these people make me look like a sarcastic asshole, which I kind of might be, but really.
I assume that's the Canadian influence, right? From the border there on Minnesota.
Yeah, sorry, eh?
The proximity. Yeah. All right.
Well, you can check my inbox on most days, and there'd be Exhibit A that Iowa nice is not exactly universally accepted.
Oh boy, I got some voicemails still sitting there right now that would pretty clearly refute that idea. And it's not even targeted at me. That's the thing. Well, this one isn't. All right. Anyways, finally this week, Jared was able to catch U.S. Senator Joni Ernst at a Northwest Iowa event recently, and she had a few thoughts on the Biden administration's actions, or I guess from Ernst's viewpoint, inaction on the ongoing issues in Ukraine. Jared, so tell us a little more about what Senator Ernst had to say up there.
So Ernst was visiting Sioux City last Friday to nominally chat about supply chain stuff and take a tour of the headquarters for Baumgars, which, for folks who don't know, is a family-owned retail chain that operates in a number of states in the Midwest region. She only really answered one question that had to do with supply chain stuff. Another question she got was about Biden's Supreme Court nominee, and she kind of gave just the stock answer that senators will give when they're asked about that, and that's that she hopes to meet with the nominee and see where she stands on a number of different legal issues. And then I and another reporter asked about Ukraine, and specifically I asked her about some folks kind of seeming to take glee in the Russian invasion of Ukraine because it makes Biden look weak. And Ernst's response to that was to say that Biden has been weak and that he needs to present strength to a very powerful leader in Vladimir Putin, who's not afraid to take innocent lives. And as for like the country itself and the citizens of Ukraine, Ernst talked about being heartbroken, seeing what was happening to them. But she stopped short of saying that like the U.S. should be sending troops or anything like that to the Eastern European nation. So that was kind of where things shook out with her when she was asked about it last week.
Did she say what strength looks like would be, I guess, my question?
No, not really. It was just that he needs to present strength to a very powerful leader. What that strength is,
but not troops.
And that's always and look, I say this, Senator Ernst is not the only politician to ever do this in history, so this isn't a direct shot at her, but that's kind of where members of Congress can sit right now in these moments, right? Is they can because they're not in that seat that the president sits, regardless of what party they're in, where every decision they make at a moment like this just has so many ramifications, and they have to weigh all kinds of things, and the folks out there on the Hill can just say, oh, we should be doing this or that. And
you'd think that Ernst would know a little bit more, having been in the mix as a member of the military, though.
Yeah. It was interesting the way you told that too, Jared. I wanted to ask, So the way you phrased your question, did she ever circle back on the point of, and also, hey folks, don't be enjoying this for your own political gains, please? Or did she kind of sidestep
Nope.
that part of the question?
Blew right through that part of the question.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think it all boils down to the fact that Joe Biden's never appeared bare-chested on a horse. I mean, maybe that's the reason that we haven't projected quite enough
I forgot
strength.
about that photo, Todd. Why did you put that back in my brain? Putin on the horse.
He needs to start like wrestling bears or like
Don't
do
give him
what
the idea.
what that Russian heavyweight whose name I'm blanking on used to like strap a refrigerator to his back and like walk up flights of stairs. Biden can start doing that.
Take up judo.
Man.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, he challenged a guy to push-ups on the campaign trail. I don't know how much more manly Republicans need this guy to be.
Well, I hope it wasn't Chuck Grassley because we know he's
he
the
knew
push-up
better than
champion.
that. Yeah. Oh God, is that what we need? The Chuck Grassley versus Joe Biden push-up challenge.
Yes. Pay-per-view.
I'm not saying no.
I will say, and to tie a little bit of this together, I just came from Senator Grassley filed his signatures to get on the ballot to run for re-election. And took a few quick questions from a few of us who were there. And he did show a little restraint on talking about, and he even said the words like, I'm not going to blame President Biden for what's going on in Ukraine. He was a little more eager to be critical of the Afghanistan withdrawal, unsurprisingly. But it was interesting to hear Senator Grassley kind of like he wanted to talk about Ukraine and you know, our need to be helpful there, but he did fall short of saying he wasn't going to be critical of the president, which was interesting to me, anyways. So, anyways, I think that wraps it up for this edition of On Iowa Politics. Thanks to everyone here. If you enjoy the podcast, tell your friends and subscribe to us wherever you find your podcasts. Fan mail can be sent to podcasts@thegazette.com. Pass the bourbon, Todd. I clearly need another glass. And stay up to date on our team's coverage of the Iowa legislature by subscribing to the Capitol Digest newsletter under the Iowa Legislature tab at thegazette.com. And don't forget, you can find the work of everyone you heard today on the pages and websites of the Quad City Times, Waterloo-Cedar Falls Courier, Sioux City Journal, Mason City Globe Gazette, Muscatine Journal, Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, and Cedar Rapids Gazette. Kelly Pardekooper will play us out. If you have an Iowa band or musician who should be on the podcast, please send us a sound file. For Amy, Jared, Todd, and our producer, Steven, I'm Aaron Murphy. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Left my country home, I left the fields and plains. Feel the desert wind, escape the rain. She saw me coming from 1,000 miles away. She took my hand, asked my name. Led me to a house and fed me Spanish wine. And up till then, well, I swore I was doing fine. She said, you never smile, and it's starting to creep me out. Should I listen to my doubt? Take that gun, make me swallow. I'll be smiling forevermore. My head is spinning and my eyes can't find the door. Not in Iowa anymore. country home, I miss the corn and beans. Sand, it's in my lungs, I could really use some rain. She turned the lights down, crept up close to me, so I would feel what I could not see. Take that gun, make me swallow. I'll be smiling forevermore. Hands are tied now and my feet won't touch the floor. Not in Iowa anymore. Not in Iowa anymore. Not in Iowa anymore.
Get a daily update from the Gazette with our daily news podcast. Add it to your podcast player or your Alexa-friendly device to get a bite-sized local news update each day. Check it out at thegazette.com/podcasts.